Hello, dear students. Today we are going to discuss the Bt crops. What are Bt crops and what is the purpose of the production of Bt crops? The Bt crops are a group of genetically modified crops whose genomes have been modified by the addition of a gene known as gene, which is obtained from the plasmid of a soil bacterium known as Bacillus thuringiensis. Bacillus thuringiensis. Actually, this Bacillus thuringiensis is a soil bacterium. It normally lives in the soil, and this Bacillus thuringiensis has a gene in its plasmid. That gene is also known as gene. Here it is written in a small letter CRY, gene. And the modified crops so obtained are known as genetically modified crops. These crops are also known as these crops are also known as transgenic crops. TRANSGENIC, transgenic crops, as their genomes have been modified by the addition of a gene which is obtained from other living organism. Here the gene has been obtained from a microorganism, from a bacteria known as Bacillus thuringiensis. These transgenic crops, that is the Bt crops, they are obtained. These Bt crops are obtained to make these crops resistant to large number of insect pests which usually damage these crops. There are large number of insects of the group of lepidopterans like army worm, tobacco budworm, coleopterans like beetles, and dipterans like flies and mosquitoes. These are the three main groups of insects, that is lepidopterans, coleopterans, and dipterans, which act as insect pests to the large number of crops. The Bt crops so produced usually show resistance against these insect pests, as it has been shown that these insects can reduce the yield of these crops, the yield of the crops, for about 1 to 40%, 8 to 40%. The cry gene which is introduced into the genomes of these crops get expressed in the form of a formation of in the form of the formation of a protein known as cry protein. Here cry is written by a C having here formation of a protein known as cry protein. The first letter of this cry is capital to differentiate it from the gene, as here the first letter of this cry, that is C, is small letter, here it is capital letter, cry protein. This cry protein is produced in an inactive crystalline form, also known as protoxin. That is, the cry protein produced by the cry gene in the genomes of the crops, which are obtained by the introduction of this cry gene in their genomes. When it gets expressed in the form of the formation of a protein known as cry protein, this cry protein is produced in an inactive form, inactive but crystalline form. That form is also known as protoxin, as it is not harmful to these insects. When this protoxin is eaten by the larvae of the insect pests, which is also known as caterpillar. When the caterpillars or the larvae of these insects takes this protoxin form of the protein, also known as crystalline protein, also known as protoxin, when the larvae of these insects, which are pests to our crops, take this protein, it gets converted into the soluble active toxic form. The main factors responsible for conversion of an inactive protoxin form into the active toxic form is the alkaline pH and the enzymes in the midgut of these insect larvae. The toxin attacks the epithelial cells of the midgut and cause pores and lysis in them. That is, the pores are caused in the cells of midgut, that is epithelial cells of midgut, and lysis is also caused, that is breakdown also occurs in the epithelial cells of midgut. These larvae become sluggish and stop to eat. Then they get killed. Thus, these crops, that is Bt crops, are protected, that is they get resistance, protected from the attack by these insects. Hence, our yield also gets increased. There are large number of examples of Bt crops. I can mention here few. Bt cotton, Bt maize, Bt brinjal, Bt soybean, Bt rice. Here you will see in front of each crop, that is in front of cotton, you will see Bt written. In front of maize, Bt written. In front of brinjal, Bt is here. What does this Bt means? Bt means that this brinjal has got a gene from the bacterium known as Bacillus thuringiensis. That is why these are known as Bt crops. Bt cotton, Bt maize, Bt brinjal, Bt soybean, Bt rice. All such crops have got a gene from the plasmid of this bacterium normally living in soil known as Bacillus thuringiensis. Now you can answer few of the questions. What are Bt crops? These are those crops which are genetically modified crops. These crops have been modified as their genomes are modified by the addition of a foreign gene. That gene has been obtained from a bacterium, that is Bacillus thuringiensis. These crops are produced for the purpose of making these crops resistant to insect pests which normally damage our crops and reducing the yield. As I already mentioned, the crop yield gets reduced up from 8 to 40%. That is very huge loss occurs by the attack of insects. Now, by the addition of these genes, these crops are resistant to these insect pests. Hence, our crops are protected. Thank you. This was all about these Bt crops. Next lecture will be with respect to another important genetically modified crops. Thank you.